Thank you very much. It's a real honour and a pleasure to be invited here from Scotland to speak about our practice and what we do, and also especially to hear Monica before us, because I guess there's a lot of parallels between our work, and it's good to know that we're not actually as crazy as we think we might be. There are other people out there in the world who do the same thing. So we're Icecream Architecture, and I think firstly we should really explain where Icecream Architecture comes from. The idea is that we wanted to basically make architecture more accessible, and we decided that we needed some sort of a mechanism or a tool to really get out and kind of get to know communities. And there's no better mechanism than the ice cream van, which traditionally kind of goes out into communities and opens up doors and provides a service at the door of the client.
It sort of acts as a positive platform. It's something that people associate with a positive feeling. They see an ice cream van, and it's a happy memory from your childhood, and that's something that we thought could be initial breaking down of barriers when we're connecting with communities.
So in the same way as Monica, we come from an architectural background, and really it was. We don't necessarily consider ourselves to be architects in any way. It's a very different type of discipline that we do, but it always has that grounding in architectural design and urban planning. But we kind of saw that traditional architecture had kind of, in some ways, turned its back on community groups.
The traditional architect sits in a sort of closed-door office, whether that's their own office or whether it's about the legislation that restricts architectural development, and we thought there was a way that you could break down those barriers, and as we sort of developed, we realised that it wasn't just architects which restricted that. It was also about government, governing bodies, legislation that restricted it, and it was also very abstract from how communities felt about their places and how they described how they could change their places. And also how they understand what the process is of how you can actually go about changing things.
So kind of by breaking down these barriers, the professional formality, bureaucracy and things like that, we could kind of give the community and the councils a level playing field almost, so the conversations could be opened up in a clear dialogue about what the needs of the community were and how they could actually be delivered by the councils and the government could take place. So that was really the basis of the idea.
We sort of work on it both ways. So we work from local government towards communities, so offering communities opportunity to comment on local development or to invest time into local development, and then also working from community perspective. A community might come to us and ask us to help them package their idea into something that we can push forward to local government, local councils. It could be a funding body, it could be something as simple as looking for a local investor to invest in their project.
So a project that this was a consultation plan in Glasgow, which is where we're from, which is the largest city in Scotland. And the plan was really about the 50-year vision for Glasgow. And alongside an academic research, we suggested that there should also be a participation and engagement research to see how the people actually felt about their city and what they thought should happen.
It was quite a wide remit. We were asked to ask people to look back 50 years, but also to look forward 50 years. So it was really looking at a 100-year time scale, which is quite a difficult thing to get across to people and ask people to think about. But it meant that we also that you could connect on both levels with the older generation, which had a very nostalgic view on what Glasgow was and the changes in Glasgow, and then you could also connect with the younger members of society, which were looking more forward to what their careers, what their lives were going to be in Glasgow.
And I think this is where the social face of Icecream Architecture and the use of the van really came to a fore, because it was almost, we kind of pitched ourselves up at festivals and things like that, open to the public, on-street presence, and the van acted as a magnet. It was something out with the actual discussion, but it encouraged people to come and talk to us, and it also then provided a kind of an opportunity to bring people who were really interested and intrigued by the 50-year plan to come inside and actually develop the conversation a little bit further.
We used different mechanisms to sort of encourage people to stop. So the van was one, but we also had a sand pit that children would stop and play with, and then we could speak to the parents. And we had a large table which had a map of Glasgow on, and we gave people markers, and they just wrote their thoughts in the area that they came from in Glasgow. And then as the days progressed, we moved the board around Glasgow, 5 different locations over a 2-week period. And as the consultation progressed, the board got more full. People commented on things that other people had said, and you started to develop a story of what people in Glasgow were actually thinking about where Glasgow is and where it's going.
So all very simple techniques, really, but it was about actually bringing the voice of the public into the document. And then we worked alongside. It was a way of really getting to know people and getting local anecdotes, reasons why they were happy where they lived, why they disliked things, how the things had changed. And in terms of, Agnieszka spoke earlier about emotion, there was real emotion came out in these discussions that we had. There were tears shed from older people who had been displaced by the council's movement of communities and tearing down tower blocks. And there was real happiness about certain public spaces that had been brought to the city. So it kind of garnered that level of understanding within the report, which we worked alongside the academic research of the project as well to deliver.
We were able to bring out in the report as well ideas that perhaps the council shies away from sometimes. In Glasgow there is issues of sectarianism, there's issues around schooling, about public space for children in certain areas, and a lot of this is often glossed over and not reported, but because this was the voice of the public in Glasgow, they couldn't really gloss over it, and it had to be represented within the report.
And the project really fit with kind of our beliefs that the projects are really made by the people that use them or the people that get involved. That's the real test of a project. And we were asked to represent our standing in an exhibition in the Glasgow School of Art in their the Macintosh Gallery. And this project, Mobile Solutions, looked at the idea of a cairn, which is a traditional Scottish and Celtic burial ground, which is created by people bringing stones from the bottom of a mountain to the top and placing it together. And it happens over time, but collectively it's a structure that is created by a large group of people from varying backgrounds. And we wanted to kind of instill that within our exhibition piece. And so Mobile Solutions was the actual invite for the exhibition folded into a box or brick that we then invited the people who came to the exhibition to design and to adorn the brick and to create their own stamp on it. And then they could come and place the brick within the exhibition. So on the first day we had maybe 5 or 10 bricks, and kind of over the course of the 3 months it grew into this bigger structure that left messages from people from across the world and kind of left them have their own stake on the exhibition itself.
It was a way of sort of instilling the idea that participation isn't our idea of participation isn't just around architectural projects. It is about exhibition. It's about people really interacting with the things that can inspire them or help them to get a message across. And we had varying messages on the bricks, from what people ate for dinner when they came home from school to messages from across the world of their enjoyment of Glasgow or things that they don't like about Glasgow. And then people started to get creative as well, and either created structures and started gluing bricks together, or created sculptures of faces using the bricks. So it really sort of demonstrated and gave back to us what the participants of the exhibition enjoyed, or what their thoughts were at the time they were there.
So it's really about the project's about engagement and looking at how we can kind of open up to different groups of people. And this was similar to a project we conducted in Ireland called the Architectural Circus, which was a project that was funded by the Arts Council of Ireland and the Department of Arts, Heritage and the Gaeltacht. And really, the remit of the project was engaging in architecture, and we thought it was necessary that it took that social face, and it kind of opened up the opportunity for people at all levels of age group, of where they live, no matter what, that they could get involved as well.
We sort of took it quite literally and hit the road with the van and toured around Ireland for a month. So in the van there was myself, my partner, my baby, and Desmond and his partner. So it was quite an interesting journey, and we got to know each other quite well over the time. But
each project was completely different, and it was quite an intense process. But in the run-up to the projects, we'd kind of developed relationships with local champions and people within each area or within each town.
So we had an architect or a local designer in each town. We also had a student, which could be a designer or somebody who was just active in the community. And then we worked with these local champions to actually develop relationships with groups of people who felt strongly about something that was happening in their town. And that ranged from issues around the high street of a town to an old military base which is decommissioned, and it sat in the centre of a town and was a sort of a black hole that people weren't able to access.
So it was a cross between educational workshops and then also the consultation for larger projects which were ongoing in the town. And at the moment, kind of some of these projects have been developed into reports, and one in particular is now gone to the council, and the council of Carlow are really eager to see that the project develops, and it's almost has become an approach that they're looking to take forward in a way that they can look at small steps to achieving development rather than necessarily pulling down buildings and kind of changing the use of space. It's more about having smaller interventions that can happen over time and build a community in this way.
One of the key things that we sort of try and integrate into all of our processes is that we're reactive as well, is that when we actually spend time speaking to somebody that we then react to what they've said, and it doesn't necessarily mean that we can deliver a project that they want to happen in the area, but if it's about putting their ideas together into a report that then they can use to speak to their town councils, or whether it's about us presenting it to the town council for them, or about doing small interventions if there's no budget or there's limited budget, and then using local passion to sort of develop. And we find in Scotland anyway there's a big culture of consultation, however there's not a big culture of actually acting on the consultation. So there is a lot of information gathered from people, and often people are asked questions over and over again but see no change, and then get sort of fed up with the process and find it sort of not interesting anymore.
So I think one of the things that we try to do within the consultation process is that it's also kind of things are happening or things are changing, that people can actually see a growth or a development in the actual consultation phase, and then maybe sometimes the things don't necessarily work, but it's testing the opportunity that's there, and then that can feed into the actual project itself when they do go ahead. One of these projects where we tested this was Custom Quay. This is a picture from the Glasgow Quays, and it's a public space that was developed in the 70s, and unfortunately now it's kind of the units that we see have been blocked up. The amphitheatre, where there used to be a bandstand, there's now no bandstand, and unfortunately it's just a through route through town. This is a site that is right on the edge of the main shopping street. It's the main central focus of the River Clyde within Glasgow, and it's a real pity that the space had fallen into disuse. So it was something that we wanted to target and to bring back use to the space, but also develop a vision for this area so that it could then kind of start to happen.
It was this project was a way of us developing different ways of participating with people, and also about us sort of promoting from an education level as well. We created the project as a summer school, so we invited 10 architectural students to come and work with us for 6 weeks. We worked in the Architecture and Design Centre for Scotland in the city centre, and we set up a very public office where we were a living exhibition, if you like, and our office was somewhere where people could come and sit and talk to us. They came into the space, they saw our very messy sketches and ideas, and what we were able to do as well was bring in local professionals, local councillors, and local people to discuss with the group about the project, and in a way it was interesting for the locals, but also interesting for the students, because they get to sort of understand that process of participation from early in their education. They were only first or second year architecture students, so that was sort of spurred their interest on how you can actually develop a project.
And it really worked as a way of the project developing in such a way that things look like they are going to happen now on site, and though it won't be a big major development, which is what the previous development, like there were plans for a hotel, there were plans for a major public space on the site, and these have all fallen through now. So in the current climate, it looks as if proposals like this that can evolve over time are more likely to happen and have some impact on the local area. The council have now kind of said that there's potential in the run-up to the Commonwealth Games, which is in Glasgow in 2014, that this will become a focus of the space for performances. And that's kind of something that we decided that was, through our working in the group, was something that the area needed.
We did everything. Each week of the 6 weeks, we made sure that something happened on site. So whether it was a clean-up, so the site is in big disrepair, there's no litter bins, so whether it was a clean-up or we worked with the students to renovate the benches of the amphitheatre, just to highlight that it's there. A lot of the people that we spoke to on site didn't even realise that the amphitheatre was there. It's a big structure, but they just sort of passed it every day and didn't noticed that it was something that could be used.
So it was little interventions of public art, references to the Commonwealth Games, references to some of the safety hazards on the site, like almost craters in the paving which needed to be repaired, almost taking a humorous approach and telling people to take care around them. And then it was also about enlivening the site by having performances. We tested this initially with just having a pop-up marching band on the site, and the response was huge. The people that passed by basically decided to stay for longer on the site, and even to a point where some police, there's quite a high level of police on the site who pass through on a 5-minute basis. They kind of said the ambience of the area had changed and the atmosphere had been improved in such a way, just by the small interventions. And we developed then this into kind of more developed performances. This was during the time of the Olympic torch, and it was just introducing small green spaces. There was no electricity on the site where the bandstand was, so it was all battery operated. It was all on a very small budget, but it kind of created an influence that now the council are looking at potentially delivering something in this way. The reuse of space is also a big conversation in kind of what we do. In terms of Custom Quay, that was the disused public space in the amphitheatre. But there's a project, also an initiative, that comes from the Olympic Games legacy called Somewhere To, which we were chosen to deliver this initiative across Scotland. And it looks basically at developing relationships between space holders and young people aged 16 to 25 to open up disused spaces and to give them the opportunity to develop their talents in sports, arts and culture. So not too dissimilar to the vein of this festival happening in this building itself. It's really about opening up spaces that could just be kind of on-street spaces where somebody might want to put on a fashion show, or it could be a virtual space online where somebody wants to sell their produce, or it could be maybe a work placement for a student to develop their own talents, or to look at improving their portfolio or getting a job.
And the way that we approached this project was about ensuring that young people aged between 16 and 25 can participate in society and deliver their talents. And the next stage of this project is about thinking about enterprise. So it's about empowering these young people to think about how they can actually start to use their talent either as a career or as a business model or as a way to change things that are happening around them. So this was a young band that we took down to the Olympic Park, and they performed on the main promenade of the Olympic Park, and since then they have now been asked to tour around Scotland, and they're getting more performances, and their profile as a band has been raised. And though it's very much not architecture, it's very much about participation and about supporting people to develop and put forward their talents into the community.
And then in the same vein, a project that we're working on is Startup Street, which focuses, which actually yesterday we had discussions about Łódź itself and about the main street here having difficulties in terms of usage and making sure that the spaces are enlivened. And it's a similar conversation that's happening all over Scotland as well, especially in our regional towns and smaller cities, where shops have moved out of town, and the reason for people to come into town has been removed, basically. So this Startup Street is really about providing a platform for young entrepreneurs or young businesses to get going and to give them space in what would be high rates or high rental levels.
How we got involved in the project, there was various partners already working on the project and thinking about the framework of how you could actually start to utilise the empty high street spaces. And how we got involved is that we felt that we could start to unlock the spaces and start to use them creatively. Here it was an empty shop unit. It had been empty for 6 years. There'd been no tenants in it, and in the area there'd been a big piece of research done about the creative industries, and that there was no platform for local makers and designers to either sell or promote the work that they do. So what we did is set up the Made in Stirling shop, which was a place where people that come from Stirling could come and either sell or display their products. And because of the Stirling has a castle, and it's a high tourist drive, so not only was it great for local people because they felt that they were buying something from the people that they live and work with, but also tourists felt that they could take something away that was from Stirling, and it really sort of exemplified what Stirling can do. And the framework that was being developed, this project and a couple of other things that happened around the town started to create a sort of organic growth of projects happening sort of all over with very different organisations, things from reinstating shop fronts to the pop-up shop, and then about reusing empty space as well.
So the nature of the pop-up shop was that it was based on a 3-month temporary lease within this space, but the success of the project actually meant that they've now taken the project further, and it's hopefully going to have a permanent base. So we've almost handed over the project to another cultural organisation within Stirling itself, and they've now been provided with a new shop unit which has been given facade restoration within the town centre. So it's almost had that kind of developed that longevity that the project will continue on a more permanent basis. And around the shop itself, it wasn't just about actually the face of being able to sell the produce. It was also about the community that was built up behind it. There were artists that came straight from art school who had been trained but hadn't necessarily developed their own direction. And from being able to sell their goods, they could see kind of what people were interested in and how they could develop their own real direction.
We developed partnerships with colleges, universities, local youth groups, and we're able to offer the space as a free or low-cost space for them to deliver their own workshops as well, or deliver their own activities. So this event that you can see was a student exhibition launch, and all we did was basically offer them the space and help to facilitate basic things like drinks and things on the night, and they organised a band to come and play. And what it allowed to happen was that the relationships started to build then between more mature and developed artists to the very young start-up artists that are just beginning their career and starting to develop their attitudes around things. And that was the sort of the main benefit of the project, was creating those discussions that happened across all levels.
And this idea then of development is something that's taking us on to kind of the next project, which this is an old tax office in Stirling also, which it's a traditional kind of modern office block, but because it didn't have a lift, basically the tax sector moved out of the building, and it's been disused again for the last 3 years. So in conversation with Stirling Council, we're now looking at developing the Startup Street project even further and creating an enterprise, an incubator hub for young businesses to get going. And this will be partnered alongside, again, this, like Made in Stirling, having an on-street presence and allowing them to be at the fore of the community, have a public face for people to engage with the project and to participate from the high street.
We're at the very early stages of this project, and the first event that we're going to be holding will be in November, and we've partnered with local councils, the Scottish Government and the Architectural Design Centre for Scotland to create a workshop where we're inviting people from architecture backgrounds to performance to theatre to food to have a whole day of activity where we actually start to discuss how we could use this building and what would be the best benefit for the community and what would be the best way that we can deliver it as well, because this project at the moment has no budget and very limited resources to deliver it. We're sort of pursuing different options of funding, but we really want that ownership to come from the people who get involved. So we would expect them to take onus in how we can source funding, and whether it's about crowdfunding or looking for grants or looking for public money, then we want the people that are involved to be involved through the whole journey. So at the end, when we step away, they're left with something that they feel they're in control of and that they can continue to deliver for Stirling.
So these type of projects, they are gathering momentum, and they are kind of developing an approach that the council and different public bodies are starting to listen to and to kind of encourage in their own approach. So it's been a really positive few years that we've been working on the projects, and to see kind of the alteration in that attitude has really encouraged us to keep going with it. So
we're starting to see now that local councils are coming to us to ask us to deliver a process which will ensure that the people that are involved stay involved and stay passionate about a project, and especially because of the financial climate, then projects are smaller or more sort of community driven, and the council are realising the benefit of that, and that they can still achieve change without having major development happening in the cities. So I think
that's all. But please feel free to ask plenty of questions or throw anything at us at all.
Dziękujemy bardzo. Dziękuję.